Good morning, everyone. This is Tate Doolittle from the Nick's Boots podcast. Excited to have Henry Eichler with us this morning and tell a story about his boots. He's got an absolutely beautiful pair of boots that we found on Reddit with a great story behind them as well. So without further ado, let's jump in and meet Henry. Henry, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're calling from, and where you've used your Nick's boots.
Hey, so yeah, my name is Henry. I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and most of my boot work has been done out west in northeastern Colorado.
Henry was someone who participated in the Nick's Contender Championship, which you guys may have seen and certainly heard us talk about on the podcast. He was a late entry and had the most fantastic photos. I think most everyone listening to this probably saw them. We'll talk more about that in a minute, but he is a working man that used his boots the way that they intend to be used. Also wearing a Packer, not our most popular boot, but just an absolutely fantastic boot for the application. So he stood out on paper, had a lot of interest during the Contender Championship, and he was one of the first people when I started putting this podcast together that I said we've got to get him on and hear a little bit more about his story. Henry, let's jump in. You and I chatted already, but tell us how you actually found Nick's boots. I think this story is not too dissimilar to how many people in the last few years have found Nick's.
Yeah, so my dad is a glorified tree worker. He isn't actually in the trade at all, but he thinks that's the coolest thing ever and loves to do that stuff. And so he was watching Buck and Billy Ray on YouTube, I think it was, and he was singing the high praises of Nick's boots. And when it came time for me to find a boot to ride in, he was like, "Hey, why don't you check these guys out? Like they, seem to build high quality stuff." And I looked and was like, I'm sold.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it's funny the way this has evolved over time. That story is very, very consistent, that people finding us through influencers and certainly through YouTube and Reddit and other places. So great to hear you found the brand that way. We're going to jump in to talk about kind of how you used your boots here, because you had an interesting journey into the role that required these boots. Why don't you start and just kind of tell us the whole story? How'd you end up in Colorado? How'd you end up around horses? And why? Then we'll talk about why you picked these boots.
Yeah. So when I was in college, I still am in college, but when I was younger, I wanted to get out for the summer and go do something out west because I'm a big fly fisherman and wanted to find somewhere out west that I could go after trout all summer. And I had actually gotten a job on an oil rig in North Dakota. I was talking to a buddy about like doing that type of thing. And he was like, "That does not sound fun at all." He was like, "But I worked on this dude ranch out in Colorado." He was like, "You should apply." And so I did. I applied out there and I applied for any position they had because I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, but I just knew I wanted to be out west. And so
Right.
They ended up having a kitchen position. So it's a dude ranch where, people go out on vacation and we give them the Western experience. And so they had a kitchen position and I had some kitchen experience before. And so I jumped at it. Pretty quickly when I got out there, I'm seeing the wrangling position and them around horses all day. And I'm like, I don't know anything about that, but I got to figure out how I can do that.
That's awesome,
so that's
man.
kind of where it started.
Yeah. That's cool. I think when you and I chatted before, I spent my summers through college working at a rafting company, guiding on the river in Colorado. And it was so great to have a mental break from the books and to be outside, though a very different industry. One of those as well, where gear was critically important. I was on the river 7 days a week. For you, I think when we chatted earlier, you mentioned you were this first summer, you were in the kitchen 6 days a week. You got 1 day off a week. And then you went out and spent that 1 day with the horses, right? And kind of nights and evenings and weekends whenever you could.
Yeah. So I they give everybody that works there an opportunity to ride. And I mean, I'd say you can take advantage of it and you cannot take advantage of it, just depending on what you want to do. But I know that I tried to ride like on my day off all day long, just because I wanted to try to figure it out,
That's
so
awesome.
that they would maybe trust me to do the wrangling job the next summer.
That's awesome. So during this time, we are a footwear podcast. I'm assuming you're just wearing whatever boots you had because you weren't wrangling at this point. You hadn't gotten into a pair of Nick's boots. Am I correct there?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I bought some like $60 cowboy boots on eBay and was like,
Yep.
this will work for the summer,
Yep.
And they really kind of didn't, but that's all right.
Yeah. Nice. So you spend every waking moment that you can riding horses. You get to the end of the summer and you got to have a conversation about what the next summer looked like, correct?
I did, yes. So I I kind of got in the bug of like the last couple of weeks of
Yep.
Townsend, who runs all the horse side of things, and they were willing to let me come back because I just showed that I could work hard and was committed to trying to learn how to ride. And I definitely was not the best, still not am the best, don't claim to be the best, but they were confident that I'd be able to figure it out. And so I knew as I left that summer I was coming right back to do the wrangling job.
That's awesome. So you leave and go back to school for the school year, knowing you're coming back as a wrangler. And then this is where this conversation begins with your father, right? About you need better boots, and that leads you to Nick's, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, I was looking at getting a nice pair of riding boots. And when you're looking at riding boots, you're already in the, $500-$600 range,
Right.
For, what everybody wear, the expensive stuff, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And he, kind of pointed me towards the Packer and the lace up Nick's boots that you guys offer.
Yep.
And I did my own research, just like looking up YouTube videos about how they're built. And, I think there's somebody on YouTube that like cuts all these boots in half and
Yep.
stuff. And
Yeah.
so,
Weston at Roseanneville.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He's
So
cool.
I just kind of looked and I was like, these are the toughest things that I can find. And I think that they'll, last me a lifetime. So might as well do that deal.
Yeah, it's an investment. It's a huge investment, especially for a summer job. And you're not wearing them 365, but the days that you are wearing them, they're critically important. So you put in an order for some Packers. I want to talk about the order experience, but then I think you said once you arrive, you were the only guy in a Packer boot or in a style boot like that. What was that like explaining them to people that you were working alongside?
Yeah. So the one thing was they're pretty heavy compared to
Yep.
a lot of, especially like the cheaper made boots are super light. And so,
Yep.
they kind of understood that they were cowboy boots because they have like the toe bug and a spur shelf. Like they look like cowboy boots, but everybody's like, I don't know why you would choose that. You know what I mean? Just because they don't get it. It's not the style, I guess.
Yep.
But yeah, so I was the only one in Packer boots. And then by the end of the summer, there was another buddy of mine who took the plunge and also got a pair of Packers. I can't remember if they were Nick's or not, but anyways, like I convinced him that it was a good deal.
It's interesting. This lightweight versus heavyweight debate comes up in a lot of different spaces. Just yesterday, I was talking to a guy in the hunting industry, and the most popular boots right now are very, very lightweight, but they have a lot of durability issues. And it's kind of, because they've become so heavy, it's made our boots at times so light. It's made our boots feel heavy at times. The reality is our boots are not that heavy. They're built without cardboard. They're fully leather. They're fully rebuildable. So for someone that is making this investment, they can go back and, they can basically wear them for a lifetime. But as things have trended towards lightweight, it feels great when you bring them out of the box. But, 6 months into the job, are they still up to the task at hand?
Right. And if you're wearing them every day, you're not thinking about like, oh man, these are really heavy. Like they're just the boots on your feet,
So I want to jump in a moment and talk about your experience actually wearing them. That's the most important piece. But before we jump there, tell us a little bit about your ordering experience. How'd you get size? What was it like working with customer service, making sure you had them in time for a job? It was critical that you had them on day one. Tell us a little bit about that. And then we'll jump in to hear a little bit more about how you actually used them.
Yeah. So I've always been a 10B because I know that most shoes are coming a D width naturally,
Yep.
and they're like not, they're too loose. You know what I mean? I've been a 10B in everything.
Okay.
And I did the little Brannick deal just to confirm that I was a 10B in most shoes.
Yep.
And I had had some boots before that were 10B. So I figured, and they were perfect size. So I was pretty confident that like, this is my size. You know, a lot of people are a little bit worried about like, I don't really know my size, but if you do the
Yep.
Brannick deal, like it'll confirm or it'll tell you what size to order.
Yeah.
And then when I ordered them, I didn't know like exactly how long it was going to take. I knew that it took a while. But I had a great experience. And I think, you know, I was getting close, like 3 weeks out from headed to the ranch and hadn't really heard anything from the boots. And I,
Yep.
put out like a little thing on Reddit that was like, hey, you know, I'm just curious. I haven't heard anything about these boots. And you guys, you know, rushed the production of them to make sure to, you know, get them to me before I headed out west, which I thought was super cool. You guys
Yeah.
definitely have the best customer service of like any company I've ever had the pleasure of purchasing products from.
Well, we certainly appreciate that. I will pass it along to the team because it's dedicated work by a lot of folks who make that stuff happen. And you know, we get requests like yours every single day, and we try and accommodate them to the best that we can, while also shuffling all kinds of production needs. And you know, I think everyone assumes that every boot gets built exactly in the order that it was ordered, and while you know that is generally true, we also have to batch things to get them out at the right time. It's just sometimes I walk in there, I sit in these production meetings, and it makes my head spin. So kudos to that team, both production and customer service, for all the work they do to get boots out to people. We know that people are working in our boots, and so it's critically important that they have them. I want to touch on two things that you mentioned there. The first is the Brannick. I think the Brannick sometimes gets overlooked. I think in today's e-commerce world, people call us up and they say, hey, you know, this tennis shoe fits this way, but this boot's a little big, but that one's a little bit wide. That becomes a really hard conversation for our customer service to handle. Now, we've done it. We're happy to do it. But boy, starting from a Brannick measurement is incredibly helpful because it's a finite number. You know, it is a specific number. This is the length. This is the width. Now we have something to work from. There's a couple brands that we can do the same thing with. You know, if we know what someone wears in a Red Wing Iron Ranger, we can work off of that. But in general, starting from a Brannick is going to make your ordering process significantly simpler. That does mean you have to go find one. You got to walk in a store. You could go in a Boot Barn. You could go in a Red Wing store, really any shoe store. That's the little device that you're going to step on. That's a great way to start start the ordering process off on the right foot. I don't remember what my second thing was, but glad you got your boots. I think that's ultimately the most important thing. Let's talk about how you actually used your boots. You and I chatted already before this, and it sounds like you really put them through the ringer that summer. Tell us about that experience and kind of how the Knicks boots helped you get through the summer.
Yeah. So for whatever reason, this past summer, it was really, really wet all summer,
Okay.
in Colorado where we were. And so I would put my boots on. I had muck boots on in the morning because we're around, you know, and trying to keep our boots clean for as long as possible.
Yep.
And then around like 9 a.m. in the morning, I put the boots on and they didn't come off until maybe 5 p.m. in the afternoon whenever work was done. But
Yep.
it was I was pretty concerned at first just because I was stepping in ankle deep combination of horse manure and pee and mud. You know what I mean? It was just
Yep.
like a
Yep.
slurry of disgusting. They definitely patinaed very quickly, but
Yep.
my feet were never wet. That's one thing that I will say is like, as far as like, you know, it was so muddy and so rainy that pretty much everybody's boots at some point or another are soaked through.
Yep.
And even if, you know, I'm surprised that it just didn't soak through the leather. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we were in it every day, all day long, but I'm, you know, like caked in mud all the time. And so that's the first thing that I was like, this is pretty impressive that
Yeah.
they're able to do this, you know. So I was in them every day, and I was a little bit nervous at first about like kind of breaking them in, but you just jump in them and go, and you're not thinking about, you know, I'm riding a horse every day for the first time in my life, now.
Yep.
So I'm a little more worried about that than, whether or not my feet are comfortable. But, I don't think the break-in process was terrible for me. And I think that probably goes back to just, getting the right size boots.
You bring up
Partially.
a good point there. Controversial topic perhaps, but I do find that people that jump in their boots and just start wearing them and getting to work, their break-in is maybe a little bit more painful, but the duration tends to be much shorter. I was talking to someone the other day who's just now inching up on wearing their boots a couple hours a day after having had that boot for a couple months. And while that's a fantastic way to get there, and a lot of people need to start that way, I think you bring up a really good point, which is getting them sized correctly and then wearing them for the task at hand can be really helpful. Now, you probably got a little bit of help for the fact that they were wet.
Yeah.
And some of those details certainly help with your break-in. I'll also caveat, you weren't in a waterproof boot, which is interesting. We do have I don't think so, right? You weren't in a weather shield leather.
No, it wasn't leather or anything.
So that's interesting as well. We would not claim that boot is waterproof. I do think because we use pretty thick leathers, much thicker than the rest of the industry, and certainly thicker than what your friends were getting in riding boots. Those tend to actually be much lighter even than some of the heritage boots. That's probably a big reason why your feet stayed relatively dry. But cool to hear.
Yeah.
All right. So you're wearing these boots 7 days a week, right? 6 to 7 days a week,
Yep.
8 hours a day.
Yeah. I mean, they're the most comfortable things I've ever worn. As far as that's concerned. The one thing that I was amazed at was how many times, every day we're around 120 horses, ish. And so you get stepped on and, all the time. And I got stepped on a bunch and never once. I think I'm pretty sure I actually broke my toe this summer because horses will stomp the ground to get flies off their legs.
Yep.
And the toe box of my boots was not crushed. And I was like, this is amazing because there's not even a comp toe in it.
Right.
So I figured, I just kind of knew that going into this, these are going to have crushed toes and that's okay.
Yeah.
But they're still intact to this day. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
That's awesome. You mentioned you get stepped on all the time. Was there ever a point, throughout that summer that you just thought, I am so glad that I have these boots? It could be it saved you from injury, or you weren't dealing with back pain, or any moment along the way that you're just super pleased to have a pair of Nick's boots?
There was one time that I was super pleased that I had a Packer, which was we would take the kids out on a shorter little ride and then climb up this mountain. And I was so glad that I had lace up shoes on versus cowboy boots. Cause I was kind of amazed that we were taking kids up this. They'd been doing it all summer, obviously. And I just had never been a part of that. And I was just so glad that I had lace up boots. And then I would say when I realized that my Knicks were way more valuable than anybody else's stuff was just seeing how beat up people's boots were getting, how trash they were and the leather's cracking and stuff like that. And part of that is I really took care of them. But I think that also comes, for me at least, if I spend a lot of money on something, I usually take care of it. Whereas if I buy some piece of junk product, I might not take care of it as well. But I think the Knicks coupled with me taking care of them made them, outlast everybody's stuff.
No, that's a great transition. I was going to ask you about what you did to take care of them. All your equipment was critically important, starting from your feet. Tell me a little bit about your kind of the regimen that you went through. How often did you clean your boots? What did that look like? Were other people doing it?
So every 2 weeks, I would scrub them with saddle soap and then apply as much Obanofs as I could fit on them. And that seemed to work. And then the only other guy that did it as much as I did was the guy that I convinced to get other Packers. He kind of jumped on the boot nerd train with me, I think. And every now and then somebody would be like, "Hey, can I use your saddle soap and stuff?" And I always let them. I don't, not a miser about that stuff or anything. And so, every 2 weeks, I think I would say I cleaned them. And then, there was the last like 2 weeks I was there, it got really dry. And so it was just dusty. And I don't really
Yep.
think I cleaned off my boots that much when that
Yeah.
was going on.
Were you a brush guy? Did you brush them in the evenings or once you took them off, or was it just this
I
every
was
2 week
not. No,
routine?
I was take
Okay.
them off and I'm tired and going to
Yep.
do whatever. I
Yep.
kind of wish maybe that I did brush them off, but I was so confused about how to tackle the like thick mud on leather boots, where these are situations where everybody wants to have a rubber boot on. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
and you don't. So it was a trial, but
No, I
I
get
think
that.
I think it worked out.
Yeah. I mean, the boot care is critically important. I'm converting to become a brush guy, but similarly, living in Western Washington, most of the time I'm dealing more with mud than I am the dry dust, but it does make the leather just look fantastic as well. Ask anyone in the Thunderdome if they brush their boots, and they will probably lie to you about how often they brush their boots, because I think it's all they
Yeah.
do. But no, that's super fun to hear. You have a new pair of boots headed to you here, arriving in the next couple of weeks. Tell us a little bit about that boot. What's the build? What's the leather?
Yeah, so I went with another Packer. I
Okay.
think it's the same height as the one I currently have, which is like the standard 10-inch, I believe.
Yep.
And I got it in the, I think it's Wicket and Craig makes that Cobalt, right?
Yep. The double stuff
Yeah,
cobalt.
the double stuff Cobalt is what I went with. And I built it pretty much the same as my other ones, but I didn't do a spur shelf and went with a rubber sole from the
Okay.
jump this time, just because the leather sole I wore through too quickly on my
Yeah.
other pair. But I
And you
kind of
had
bought
those
them as
rebuilt.
a.
You had those
I did,
rebuilt,
yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yep, I
that's
did. I
awesome.
did.
So
I had.
you'll be in those boots this summer at same
I
Wrangler job,
will.
right?
Yep, yep. So I'm doing the same thing. Yeah, but I'm
Nice.
excited for my new Packers. I think they're going to be more of my town boots, but that
Yep.
idea with me only lasts so long, and then I look down and I'm at work in them. So
I think
um,
I told you that's been my story. My church boots are my Packers. I wore them in my wedding. I said I was going to keep them perfect, and now I wear them every single day, and they're getting totally beat up and looking beautiful.
yep,
They're an English bridle, so not one that I necessarily intended to get out there and beat up, but just makes them look good. And to your point,
yeah,
once you get one that fits and you love it, you're just going to use it all the time. So those are on the way. I think they're headed out to you in the next couple of weeks, right?
yep. They are. Yeah, they should be here soon. Um,
Awesome.
I'm
Well,
excited.
last question I have for you is, what advice would you give to a new boot buyer? We know this can be a little bit of an intimidating process. So what would you say to the guy? You already convinced one guy to get into Packers. Tell everyone else your
I
views
think
on buying your first
I
next
think
boot.
the best thing to do is think about. I always think about buy once, cry once.
Yep.
So they say generally when you buy a good product, you're going to cry because it's going to hurt your wallet, but
Yep.
you're only going to cry once because you're going to have it forever. And I think the price can be intimidating. Some of the like options, I guess, could be intimidating, but just find like a style that you like or fits your needs, and then just buy it. I think
Yeah.
it is expensive, but in the long run, if I was still wearing Ariat boots, I don't know if I can say that, but
You can say that.
yeah, if
Yeah.
if I was still wearing Ariat boots, I would already be at the $600 mark because I'd have 3 pairs,
Yep.
by now. And so I think just do it, just get over it a little bit, and then you're
Yeah.
gonna thank yourself.
Yeah. I talked to a guy in the store a couple weeks ago, and he was working heavy construction, doing some pre-concrete work. And he told me prior to owning his Knicks boots, every 3 months he bought a new Carhartt hoodie and a pair of Red Wing boots. And he did that every 3 months. And his wife was in there, and she had finally, done the math and said, you could have afforded multiple pairs of Knicks at this point if you'd done it that way. So he was in for his second pair of Knicks. You bring up a great point. The cheaper boot is cheaper for the moment, but not necessarily in the long run. The other thing you mentioned that I think is really important as well is not to get overwhelmed by the options. I mean, you're in the Reddit world, you see the boot nerds, they're talking about boot height and toe structure and different lasts and all of that. It's so easy to get lost there, but I think you gave a great piece of advice there. Get on the website, find something you love, and order it. I mean, at the end of the day, go order a Packer, go buy a Builder Pro. If you want a fancy boot, go buy a Robert or a Falcon. Don't make it too complicated. Any of the 64 brown leathers are beautiful. Any of the double shot or double stuffs are beautiful as well. So don't make it too complicated. That's certainly something that I'm telling people these days as well. Henry, it was awesome to talk to you today. We've got some amazing photographs that we're going to drop in here from your time on the ranch. Appreciate them sharing those images with us and letting us use them. This conversation's been awesome. Just great to hear that you were in Packers every day and that they served you well. Thanks a lot for telling your story.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Best of luck out there this summer, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, man.
Thank you again. I appreciate it.